now this is where the story gets very interesting to me. In my years of working with the military, I've only come across one guy who had this distinct honor. And because it's such a small group of elite guys, and you served in the old guard of Arlington National Cemetery.
Yes, sir.
Guy's picture. And if you don't know what that is, the old guard is a group of guys who basically, for every soldier that is buried in Arlington, there's a service, and it is the highest honors in America. There's no doubt about it. But it's a very small group of guys, right? This is it's called the Old Guard. Sierra's father served in the Old Guard as well. And you guys, we were looking back, you had looked it up when we did her podcast to see if they were there the same time, and I think you guys had just passed. Right. So if you ever watch Memorial Day and you'll see the changing of the guards, for you young kids that's never seen this before, you'll see the changing of the guards at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, placing of the wreath, caissons with horse-drawn carriages. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful, the ceremonies that are done there. And how long did you serve in the Old Guard?
3 years. So when I was in basic training, I got recruited. Yeah, right there.
The guy there in the middle.
The dude with the arrow. Thanks, babe. We all look the same. Yeah, so you had to be a certain height and get a certain score, which I was surprised because,
You had to be a certain height and stuff.
Yeah, you had to be a certain height.
Could I have made that? I'm a runt, so it's not going to work, is it? I'm good looking. I can do it.
Those boots, you might have squeaked in.
Squeaked in.
You might have. And you had to have a certain, what they call a GT score, which somehow I did all right on my testing when I entered. For a guy who didn't graduate the 9th grade, somehow I got some really high score on the GT score.
So this also puts you in some very unique positions with the president as well. You was at some of the, the inaugurations?
Yes, sir.
Stuff like that?
Yeah.
So they call generally on these guys for all the special events that are happening in Washington, I'm assuming. So.
Right. A lot of times we referred to ourselves as kind of toy soldiers.
Toy soldiers.
We would, we were a lot of the face of it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, this is what they have to use. It's
yeah.
Pretty sad.
Yeah.
This is the face.
Right.
And so we would be at a lot of events from like Reagan's funeral, President Reagan's funeral, George Bush's inauguration, lots of events. So usually in Arlington, you're either killed in action to be buried there, or you're retired or higher ranking. So you would meet and interact with a lot of people that were kind of high up and all that kind of stuff.
But man, what an honor! That to have the distinct honor to be at Arlington, period, for any of those services, but to serve in that capacity is hugely honorable in our nation because it's such a small group of guys. And I remember those guys talking about that I forgot all the qualifications and everything. You chose not to do the Unknown Soldier because it was such regimented. It was so regimented.
Right, yeah. I was having a good time while I was there. And I took my job very seriously. And it was another one of those times when, I started feeling pulled, kind of like before I went in. The one thing about being in such a small unit, each different unit, at least in the Army, you get so many slots allowed for different types of schools and all that kind of stuff. And what I found out is, basically I would always make myself available for all these schools that anything anybody would send me to. I didn't care.
Right.
I went to Army Barber School. I went to, Airborne School and all these different ones. And I found out because I made myself available, that gave me access to things that wouldn't have been available to me elsewise.
Right.
And so I kind of volunteered for anything I could get into. And if it wasn't, we did the 21 gun salute. Was on the firing party. So it was either that or I was all away at some school or I was having fun.
So you become a paratrooper.
I do.
And I asked you, why did you jump out of these planes? And your response was, well, we kind of fall out.
Yeah. Or get shoved out
Shoved out.
Whichever way. Yeah.
Paratrooping. And so you would become a sniper. I've seen that on your medals.
Yes,
Sniper
sir.
training.
Yep.
Paratrooper, infantry, and all of a sudden now the war is heating up pretty hot, and you decided you'd take a transfer.
Yeah. So when you go into the Honor Guard, you do a 3-year contract with them. I'd signed up for 6 years because it had the best bonus, and so I did my first 3 years there, and started. I kind of worked my way up and was doing what they call full honors funerals, so caisson, all those kind of funerals, and so I'm starting to see a lot of these guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, killed in action.
Oh wow! Now it makes sense. You're having to be, because I remember during that time we were getting a flood of guys in, and they're going to Arlington, and you're watching that. You're having to be a part of all those funerals.
We're burying them, and
Now that makes sense.
and I'm watching this happen, and I just start feeling that pull again. I'm like, I can't just stand by idly. And so it came time for me to either re-up for another contract in the Honor Guard, but I had asked my supervisor at the time, my platoon sergeant, to ask if I could figure out who the next guys were that were going to deploy, and see if I could get with them. I couldn't be okay with just burying these guys if I wasn't willing to fight beside them.
Wow.
So we asked around, and we found out that the 173rd Airborne out of Vicenza, Italy, was the next guys kind of slotted to deploy. And because I volunteered for all these schools and all this kind of stuff, I was able to get a slot there because I'd already been airborne qualified and all that kind of stuff.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you. I want our church to hear something. You turned down the most gravy, honorable job in the entire United States military to serve at Arlington National, to go to the heat of the war. That might be heard of in some circles, but it's spiritually speaking, we're stepping on now where our Father turned down his royal robe in heaven to go and fight the battle for us. Boy, I feel a little preach up in here, because this is the part that struck me. We were at the house, and when I interviewed him at home, I was just in tears sitting there. I said, "You turned that down?" And part of me understands why. I see that. It's just that you didn't have to. Can I say this to your church? Jesus didn't have to. But the call to battle was from what you've seen in the casualty rate. And they put you, of all places, with a brigade, I guess is the name. Chosen Company was the name of it, right?
Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about Chosen Company. What is that? And
So the
I'm sorry, 173rd Airborne?
173rd, yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So the 173rd out of Italy is it's another really small unit. I was stationed in D.C. and Italy, like compared to like Fort Bragg or some of these other places. I was like pretty lucky.
Right.
And so we get over there, and we're based out of Italy, but it's a really small unit, and they. Because you're stationed in a foreign country, the guys become super close together, right? Like, you'll go out and you'll see things and you'll travel together, but you're foreigners in another land, and so you kind of get this really tight bond with one another, and some of the greatest people that I've ever met were there. But we knew we had a job to do, and so we trained hard, trained a lot. From Hohensfeld to different places around Germany and stuff like that, we would train up. And originally we were slotted to go to Iraq. So that's what we trained for, was a lot of mounted or inside Humvees training, and that's kind of what we had planned on. And then in the last minute, that got scratched, and they said, you're going to Afghanistan. And we did.